On this episode of the Layover Live, we're talking DMO data with Aaron Nissen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 114 of the Layover Live, where we bring you the top article from the Layover each week. I'm Jason Swick, VP of Digital Marketing, joined remotely once again by Aaron Nissen. So, Aaron, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Aaron, happy to have you here. And again, being our Director of Digital Strategy, I think it's great to have you on because I know right now you're working a lot with clients on the front line. And one of the biggest questions that I think we're starting to hear from a lot of DMOs right now is, what will recovery or rebound in travel look like when things start to come back? And this is a really, really tough question to answer, but it's very much an important one. We often wonder, I think, will it be a slow and steady return, or will it be off to the races with huge demand from people being pent up and locked up in their houses, so to speak, for so long? The V-shaped curve that everyone is hoping for would be nice, but the longer this goes on, the more complicated it's going to get to answer this question, especially as we're starting to see an increase in loss of jobs as of late. And unfortunately, this is the new norm for the time being. Now, I've got my own opinions on this as well, but I wanted to bring it to you, Aaron, to talk about this. But before I kick things off, I want to talk about the article of the week, which talks about some of these things as it relates to DMO web traffic and data. And it comes from FocusWire. And the article is Tracking Declines in Online Travel Traffic as Restrictions Hit Across the Globe. Now, recently, for ourselves, we have put together our own sort of data hub to better visually show how this is really affecting the tourism industry and websites in general. The charts that we've provided not only show year-to-date comparisons year over year, but more importantly, as the gap then begins to close and we start to see traffic begin to pick up again, it will allow DMOs to properly determine when we should be getting ourselves back into marketing. So, Aaron, I know you've been working with Grant and with Paul on the team on some of these. So before we even get into that, let's talk about the article. What are your thoughts on the article in general?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting article in that it really illustrates the global impact coronavirus is having on travel-related sites, and particularly airlines, accommodations, hotels, and car rentals. So from that perspective, it's interesting to see how we're all kind of in the same situation, and how many of the travel patterns are the same. So I really enjoyed that. And then one thing I really liked about how they displayed the data was they showed the number of cases and the impact on site traffic. So I thought that was a very unique way of looking at how that's presented. So it was good to see. There were a few limitations that I kind of struggle with in terms of how that data was presented. And that was largely based on the data coming only from mid-March till this year, or this month. So it's been about a month, and it was a little bit tricky to kind of go back and see the cumulative impact over time on website traffic. So I would have liked to see if it was just a little bit easier to digest that. But overall, it was a really good indicator of what's happening in other sectors, particularly those major OTAs, et cetera, like that. So yeah, it was a good article, just, interesting to see how everybody's being impacted, but there's some limitations there that I would have liked to see the data presented differently, which is one of the things you alluded to in terms of what we've done with our own DMO traffic to look at when were the tipping point for traffic decreases, and can we correlate that to what's happening in the world regarding coronavirus?
Yeah, you mentioned the data that we pulled, so I think it's important to maybe talk about that. So Aaron, let's elaborate and dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been constantly asked for is, what's happening to our traffic? Is this normal? Because there was a pretty steep decline there, and it really rocked the boat for many DMOs. So what we did is we pulled the data from over 200 DMO websites to look at what was happening and find those benchmarks. So we could then explain to our partners, you're not alone, this is happening, here's the standard, average, and here's what's happening to your site. So as we did that, we were able to kind of see the cumulative story of where things started to kind of go downwards. And it really started around February 26th, where we started to see a slight decrease in primarily organic traffic to DMO websites. And that kind of just slowly kind of went downwards. And then March 11th was a very big inflection point where DMO traffic took a steep drop off, and it basically was a nosedive. What we think was, excuse me, this was largely related to the White House announcing the European Union travel ban or restrictions that when that hit, coronavirus really became mainstream, and I think the media was really starting to tap into this and realize how big this is going to be. So from March 11th in the coming days, a massive drop off, probably about 50% in traffic, and then when we look deeper, a big part of that was destinations limiting their paid media or pulling that off, realizing it's not appropriate to be in market. So it really dropped off pretty significantly there. But the good news is we've kind of hit a bit of a plateau. We feel that traffic has declined by about, say, 66%. And now we're kind of flatlining. We're not seeing any more drops. It seems to be steady. And now that gives us a framework, our benchmark to look for incremental gains or indicators of positivity, of traffic coming back, et cetera. So, we really wanted to start tapping into the consumer mindset and behavior to understand what are they doing, and then how can we understand that behavior and how we can leverage it or tap into it from a DMO.
Yeah, good stuff there, right? A lot of news that was happening. A lot of things were happening very quickly. It's interesting to see the correlations between the data, which you called out, but you touched on also consumer behavior, which can be a bit of a loaded topic. So, tell us a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah, so the first thing we looked at there was the website traffic. And so we saw the declines there, but then we started asking why. How is this happening? What are the consumer actual patterns of behavior here that's causing that decrease? So we started looking at search, and search behavior is a really good indicator of consumer intent and what they're interested in. And we've been using a free tool, Google Trends, which allows you to search for your destination and analyze search patterns via Google. So when we started to look at those search trends, we noticed a pretty big decrease in hotel, vacation rentals, and searches like that imply traveling. But we also noticed a huge uptick in searches for local delivery, restaurants that are open, and really kind of that local search pattern behavior of people looking just for food and some of those basic amenities as it kind of pertains to travel. So that was the first sign that we saw on search of actual consumer behavior. And then we've been going a little bit deeper to look at things such as, of the website traffic that is still going to DMO websites, what are they doing there? Are they using booking engines such as Book Direct? What type of content are they looking for on the website, so we can better tap into that?
Yeah, all good stuff there, right? So, how about an example? Do we have an example of who's like doing some of this right? There's a lot that's going on. Talk about search, web activity, who's doing it right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great examples out there. I think
There
one
are.
of my favorites, being Canadian, is seeing what
No
Toronto
bias.
has done with their no bias at all. Seeing what Toronto has done with their To Go Toronto, they very quickly spun up a individually branded website that promotes To Go Toronto and really features restaurant listings. And it's really got its own little brand that's not really tourism affiliated. So it really is a good service to the community, and really trying to help people out, tapping into listings of all the restaurants and whatnot, to just give the public what they're looking for and make their lives easier. And the real impact of that is you're still, as Toronto, they're still getting traffic, they're still generating referrals, still showing value in these strange times to their stakeholders.
Yeah, you make a good point there of continuing to show value and show it in those different and creative ways. So, yeah, shout out to Scott Beck out there in Toronto. They're doing a good job with all of this.
Yep.
So, but I want to circle back and kind of get back into consumer behavior a little bit. So,
Sure.
let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So as we've been kind of trying to dig in deeper and find more answers, because many of our partners are looking for clarity as to what do they do now. So when we looked at the website activity of that remaining traffic, it was a little bit interesting in terms of what was happening. We saw generally the time on site is increasing, but the pages per session is decreasing. So it really just tells us that people are looking for content. They're not going really, really deep, and they're primarily sticking to restaurant news, updates about the coronavirus situation, and how it impacts their community. So really, this hyper local focus. And for the most part, we're seeing increases in local traffic from the community or nearby region or state traffic, and decreases in long haul visitation. So the other aspect that we started looking at is, with Book Direct, formerly Jackrabbit. So we worked with the team there to take a look at, how is this impacting booking behavior on DMO websites? And it was,
Mhm.
it's still a little bit early to tell, and we hope to share this information soon. But I can say generally that bookings have declined probably by about 20, or sorry, about 80%. But there's some good news to that. We've seen an increase in the booking window from 70 days ish to about 108 days. So that's, basically a month, more than a month in terms of how far people are actually booking their trips. So there's still some individuals planning those trips much longer, hoping that, coronavirus has passed and that would be a safe
Mhm.
time to go. And then also we've noticed the trip length has gone up from about 5 days to about 9 days. So that's pretty considerable. So we're trying to dig in a little bit deeper to understand, what kind of behavior is that? Is it people
Mhm.
trying to visit friends and family and loved ones, and taking extended stays? It's a little bit difficult to tell there, but we're trying to explore that further to just figure out how can DMOs leverage this data, and work with the current situation.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of information there, but again, I think it's important, and I look forward to seeing what the team's producing there because I think again there's so much as you mentioned, Aaron, that's out there that's happening. Right, there's data coming from all these great sources, and many people have done a really great job in this space of providing that data. I think the difference is, or what DMOs a lot are yearning for is really the insights and the actions of what can come about from that. So, what you're providing here, it's a lot of data. But as I said, what does this all mean for DMOs? So, what advice do you have there?
Whew, that's a loaded question, Jason.
Yes, it is. Right.
um, so yeah, I mean, it's obviously a lot to digest because I mean, the first thing here is this is really a day by day situation. Every
Mm-hmm.
day seems to bring new news, and updates in terms of what's happening. More recently, following the media cycle, we're seeing some regional clusters in New York and on the west coast of California, Washington, Oregon, who are looking at collectively trying to find ways to open up their economy and limit the quarantine. So that just happened recently. So we're starting to see very regional different aspects and from a day-to-day perspective, whereas the Midwest and out here in Arizona, we're a little bit lagging some of those communities who've been hit by coronavirus. So the first thing is it's very regionalized, and so I'd be kind of cognizant of that. But in terms of planning, we don't know when, but DMOs need to be planning for when this recovers. And so there's some short-term things which I think we've covered, and I know you guys have talked about previously in the layover. But for DMOs, they really need to be addressing restaurants that are open, providing information,
Mm-hmm.
takeout, delivery, really just feeding that local content consumption. Other things such as activities that are quarantine safe, whether it be outdoor hiking or etc. like that. Those are also things that content should be prepared for, just to help the community manage cabin fever, and still promote attractions and things to do. Obviously, abiding by your state and local quarantine laws. And so the other thing that I think DMOs can tap into is promoting local. We're seeing a lot of industries adapt, or musicians, for example, are doing Facebook live streams instead of going to the local pub on a weekend. They're just doing it on Facebook. And so there's a lot of these little local adaptations that DMOs should be tapping into and helping promote, just to keep that sense of community and offer community valuable content. And then one of the other things that's kind of been my personal favorite that we're seeing is, with the coronavirus news, it's kind of negative. And so I think consumers are gone past that point of, we understand the frustrations there. Now we're looking for getting back to kind of a new normal, which is a little bit more positive. And so we're seeing DMOs really highlighting successes in the community of restaurants that have done really good things, how they've given jobs back to the community in this time, how communities are supporting businesses. So there's just a lot of really, touchy-feely, positive messages that I feel DMOs can be a leader by amplifying that in the short term. Now, taking a step back, longer term. This is where I think most DMOs are looking for, and it's really tricky because there's a lot of factors, including things like when things do return, health and safety. People are going to have different travel patterns because they want to, mitigate contact with others. So airports might be a safety concern, etc. This might also mean that visitors don't want to go to big urban centers where it's really congested. Then we look at things like the economics of this. Coming out of this, there's going to be people who are in financial hardships, and they may not have the money to be traveling right away. So, that's going to have an impact. And then lastly, how does the travel sector recover? Restaurants and hotels and airlines, they're probably going to be working with diminished capabilities. And so, airline flights might be non-existent or a little bit more sparse. Some hotels might not be, back online, especially some of the smaller businesses. So there's a lot of factors there. Now, that's kind of the doom and gloom just to, think about. But as we look forward, what we're adopting is this concept of a rolling strategy where we create a general plan for unknown date of, kind of a layered approach of what we want to be doing, targeting, starting with regional visitation and then looking at domestic travel, et cetera. So this is kind of an ongoing approach where every couple of days we're updating with new ideas based on as we get new information about what's happening, et cetera, like that. So it's kind of a loose strategy that's continually evolving so that when we see those signs of positivity or increased travel activity, we'll be there with the right ideas and campaigns and initiatives out on the market. So really, we call it a layered approach. Don't swing for the fences right away. Really, take stock of your destination. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? If you're a highly urban destination, maybe you might want to promote, activities and experiences that are a little less, public or, with a lot of people and maybe more parks and things like that. And then for most destinations, air travel, it's going to take some time to recover. So plan for around that. Regional drive market would be a good starting point. So there's, I guess, a lot of planning that DMOs can do, a lot of different ways to look at this, but it's really a rolling strategy. And at least, most destinations should be thinking like that. So they have some plans in place. And then as we get closer to a point of, travel starting to return, DMOs are ready to execute with, a myriad of different strategies and tactics. So bottom line is it's a little bit too early to be doing much from a long-term perspective, but this thing is unfolding. And once we start to see some of those indicators of positivity, that's a good time to start, executing your longer term plans.
Yeah, Aaron, all really, really, really good advice. I think for DMOs out there, again, this kind of short-term, long-term approach, right? We're starting to move out of some of the short-term as we're starting to see a change. You can actually feel it even, right? As DMOs, we kind of came out of this kind of fear stage. Then we're starting to be this great resource, which you talked about, which is more of a short-term strategy. And now moving out of the short term, starting to think about this long term strategy with kind of like, in some instances with your rolling strategy or your agile approach, so to speak, it's an excellent way to look at things because it's much more fluid now and things are moving differently now. So great insights there. But I will also share that, Simpleview has a great resource as well that we've developed for COVID, which has links out to many of our partners out there and many places where great content in addition to ours is available for consuming. In addition to that, we also have our own data report, which shows some of the web traffic and things that Aaron and I have talked about today. That updates every single day. So take a look at that and we'll provide additional resources as those things become available. That is also starting to evolve. So we're not only going to be providing you the data on a roll-up of all of the sessions as it relates to traffic, both organically paid and for all sessions, but we're also just about to launch the ability to be able to carve that data up by the particular region that your DMO is in, as well as be able to parse that data by fly market, drive market, and local. So you can cut that up and be able to see, and really all of this is for us to be able to call when things start to turn back around, because DMOs being that top of funnel, every booking starts with research. And most of that research today is done on DMO websites. So we should start to see that turn. That turn will then hopefully lead into more consideration and planning, which will then lead into more bookings. So thank you for providing that, Aaron, today and sharing that. Also, we'd love to hear from you as well. What information is relevant to you? What would you love to see more of? We're providing all of this data, but I would love for you to provide in the comments down below things that you would like to see. What data would you like to have presented? Because we have access to a lot of data here at Simpleview, we would love to be able to share insights to help you tell your story, that help you be able to share with your stakeholders in the most productive way possible, in addition to how we're providing these updates on our website each and every week. So thank you for tuning in. Aaron, thank you very much for tuning in remotely. It's great stuff, man. You bet. And thanks for subscribing. If you're not subscribed, please do so now. It really helps us. That way you get notified when the Layover comes out each and every week. We're also available on podcasts through Spotify and iTunes. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And have a great day, everyone.